Welcome to Commander Central episode 265, and today we're taking a look at some of these spoiled cards from Modern Horizons 2. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
Oh, jeez.
Everyone's Max.
I'm Joe. There we go.
We have a fourth voice here in the Dungeon of Doom today. Welcome aboard, Joe Hofmann. How's it going?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's going well. Enjoying it so far. It's really wet and rainy here. Definitely don't get that in California, so I'm hoping I can bring that back with me.
This is not how it usually is here or how it's been here. I went for my morning bike ride today and was numb cold when I got home. I had to take a shower just to warm up, not because I was sweaty, just because I was so cold. So
yeah, it's almost June and it's only like 55 degrees outside. It's dumb.
But it hasn't been that way all summer. It's been a nice spring so far. But yeah, this weekend is going to be cool. So whatever, we'll get through it. Anyone have any big plans this weekend aside from, Joe being here in Wisconsin and hanging out?
I plan on destroying everyone in Commander with my new deck that is absolutely horrendous.
Nice.
That'll be a few days from now. Yeah, you'll come kick all of our butts, Chris.
I'm not gonna. I've playtested that deck. I've played it like 4 times and it's horrible.
Well, did anyone get to play any games, speaking of played this week at all?
Dana played games.
I did. Oh, yeah, it took me a second to remember what Chris was laughing about. I got tasked with playing a mutate deck.
Woo!
Wait, you piloted a mutate deck?
I did, and I by saying that, the commander is a mutate commander. The deck itself really didn't have a ton of mutate stuff in it, and I was never in a really good position to have to even worry about mutating something anyway. So I never had to get out my phone and look up the rules that I don't know.
Yeah, it was a friend of ours and listener of our show, Ben Johnston, his Snap Decks reanimator list. So it's a Martyr reanimator list where he just reanimates a bunch of big fatties and all that and goes ham with the deck type of deal.
Yeah, so I gave it a spin. I just never got, I had some bad draws, never hit any card draw or much, had like reanimation targets really anyway, so it just never, didn't click for me while I was playing it, but I did. Chris just loved the fact that he was giving me a mutate commander to play with that clearly made his night.
Well, I wanted you to play it because I've been harassing Ben about it, because every time he's played it, it seemed like it was really overpowerful, and he was curious about it as well. So we had you pilot it, and then it fell on the face for you, and then later that night, we ended up playing, and he played it, and it fell flat on its face for him, too, and I'm like, maybe you just got lucky with what you were doing before.
Yeah.
So does it change your mind on mutate, Dana?
I mean, no, it's still, I was still like trying to like, because all the creatures he has in the deck have like 12 keywords on them too. So I'm like, this is going to be so much worse even trying to figure out what the mutated creature I was going to make was going to do. Now, so Dana, no, it did not change my mind about mutate, but
I know you did look at another mutate deck as well.
I did, although again, I don't think she had a ton of mutate in it. She was playing mostly cat tribal.
2 mutate creatures, I think, in there, because there's two cats that do it for sure.
Yeah, was Nethroi the commander of that deck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
That was a super cool cat deck. That was fun to look through.
Yeah, the ability to reanimate the cats, because they got so many power, Nethroi comes out, and I think it's up to power 10 or something like that if you mutate. So you can return like 4 cats out of the graveyard. It's actually really, really good. Yeah,
that was I'm going to hopefully play against that. Probably not this week, but the next week I told her I wanted to play a game. So we'll get one in. I can report back how it went. Yeah, that was a cool deck.
You said that was a pet cemetery deck?
Yeah, basically, yeah, more or less.
It's cat tribal. Like, all she plays is cats, and they're like, we're not playing any changelings, anything else. She runs Nethroi as a commander and then runs Kahira, I think is how you pronounce it, as a companion, because it's all cats in the deck. No other creatures whatsoever.
That's kind of cool. That's super cool.
Yeah, I thought it was. So before we move on to some other stuff, let's jump back to our guest here briefly. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself and let people know how they might know you out there in the world?
So I am Ginger Joe on Twitter. The O in Joe is a 0 because according to CCO, I'm a 0. So it's the CCO podcast with Ryan and Brando, those guys up north. So I'm primarily just on Twitter, bounce around some different podcasts, play EDH. I'm actually a AMFT in California, so I work with kids. Underserved communities, try to teach kids how to play different board games. A lot of times I'll do that through introducing them to Magic. So that means I get to play Magic on the job. If it's important or if it's actually going to help them out, I can't like, hey, you're having some problems right now, but I really need to get playtesting in. So let's do playtesting first. It'll make you feel better, make me feel better, hopefully. But that's a little background on me.
If you want to hear more in great detail, Joe was just a guest on the Commander Crunch podcast a couple weeks back. So if you've got 3 to 4 hours to kill and want to hear a lot more about him and his background and his thoughts on pretty much everything from pineapple on pizza to his favorite Pokemon, you can give that show a listen. And after you finish with that, Max and I have episodes in there you can listen to as well.
And Joe dethroned me for the longest episode.
Did he?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I hit the 4-hour mark on that one. That's definitely a good, like, DMV, or if you have to do your taxes, which you should have done by now. But if you're behind on either of those things, those are good. Put that podcast on and then do your adulting.
Well, the bike ride I take every day is about 40 to 45 minutes or so. And it took me 5 or 6 bike rides to get through it. But I stuck it out because it was a good interview. So you did a nice job. It was interesting and informative hearing about you and your thoughts on Commander and life in general. So that was a good show.
Definitely appreciate it. Those guys, Sam and Chesh, they're awesome.
Yeah, I like that's kind of a unique thing they do, doing those long form interviews with Magic people. No one else really does anything kind of close to that. So yeah, that was neat. And Joe, you aren't a content creator. You are what I would refer to as a Magic playing personality, right? Like you're not someone who is out there recording podcasts or something, but you just have kind of gotten known as being someone who's there on Twitter playing Magic, along with guys like Lenny Woolley and I would say Dan Kraus in our particular sphere in particular. What did that? Like just you participating and talking to people? Is that kind of what got you some notoriety?
Yeah, I don't want to encourage people to try to slide into people's DMs because that obviously can be construed the wrong way or kind of creepy, but just engaging in the community, always sort of popping up, lurking in the background, being that pariah, that leper, I guess, who's sort of there. That maybe not to that extent, right, where I'm on the periphery of society, but still kind of hanging out in the background, chit-chatting with people. That's kind of me. I think like what you said, not necessarily a content creator, but definitely more of a personality, a figure in the community. So...
Well, that's a good point, though, because the 3 people I mentioned, you, Dan, and Lenny, all are also very positive people, and when you contribute to conversations, it's usually something useful and interesting. You're not just like posting. We'll see if Raphael has to beep that out or not. But like you're engaging in positive ways and like adding to the community as a whole. I think that is what has really helped you stand out, I think, in particular.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something too where I think whenever people try to get into content creation, they're trying to find their like niche. What am I going to create that's maybe going to be different or that's going to add to something? And so I tend to try to stay away from opinions because my opinions on Magic cards are normally pretty bad. I think cards that are good are actually bad and vice versa. And so it'll be exciting to kind of review some of the Modern Horizon stuff just because it's all insane. None of it's relatively bad, but we'll see what we get into with that. But yeah, trying to more stick to the positivity side because it's not hard to be positive. Try to see the bright side in things and, you know, focus on the fact that we get to play this game that's been around now for almost, 30 years?
Yeah.
That's definitely kind of a cool aspect of it. And introducing newer people to the game, connecting with different content creators, just everybody, just getting to be a figure who tries to be positive, engage with everybody, play some games, just have fun.
Very cool. Well, if you out there in listener land want to reach out to us and say hi or tell us how positive Joe has been having him on social media and sharing his thoughts, how would you go about doing that, Chris?
You can find us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com, and you can also find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central.
You can also head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central. Check out our reward tiers such as a Decks You Play episode, guesting on the show, or just joining our community and playing virtual EDH with all of us. And then this month, we're wrapping up a couple giveaways on Twitter. We're giving away that Phyrexian Swamp from Jumpstart. So go over there and like and retweet and follow to get entered to win that. And then if you support us on Patreon, or start to support us on Patreon, you'll be entered to win a Fate Reforged Clash Pack.
All right, very cool. So Modern Horizons 2, there's a ton of crazy stuff, and let's kind of jump into this right away to get started. Before we look at individual cards, I'm wondering what everyone's reaction is so far, and I will go to you first, Chris, because you kind of have 2 angles on this. As a Modern player, you are looking at cards from both a Commander perspective and as a Modern player. What do you think of what you've seen so far?
I'm so torn on that. It's really, really good. I mean, if I look at it from an objective standpoint, this set is phenomenal. It's going to bring new aspects into Modern. People can do more wild and crazy cool things and all that. As a player, I'm so disappointed. What were they thinking with some of this stuff?
I mean, it's definitely going to shake things up for sure, and I'll be hopefully without breaking things, but I guess we will see.
Yeah, I mean, at least Mox Opal's not, unbanned anymore or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about Affinity going ham. But those new lands, I don't know if they're going to be good. I have a feeling they're going to be phenomenal, and I'm a little worried about it.
How about you, Max? What are your thoughts here?
I think I like this a little better than Modern Horizons 1. I think we knew kind of what to expect after last year or 2 years ago. I don't play Modern, but I see a lot of cool things that will impact Modern, along with great reprints for Commander. So I appreciate that from that aspect.
And Joe, back to last to you here. What are your thoughts so far on sitting in?
Yeah, having never played Modern before, I don't know why they call it Modern Horizons. There's a lot of cool Commander cards. That's how I see it. I have no idea too. I see this card, I'm like, how is this going to affect Modern? But from just a standpoint of being a player, it feels like every day there's something crazy. There's something new.
Yeah.
People, I can't believe they would print that. How does that work? Just from meme cards, it looks like WotC's been spending a lot of time on Reddit, whether that's been good or bad. They've definitely been reading people's posts and are like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and make a card out of that. So it's really cool and exciting to see everything. I'm not sure how it's going to shake out, though, or what the rest of the spoiler season's going to bring.
One thing I've mentioned in the past is I liked Time Spiral Block a lot, just in general, because of how many crazy things showed up. And I like it when they kind of revisit that, where there's just random keywords everywhere and like callbacks to past sets. And this is like that. There's just so much goofy stuff in here. Like, hey, what if a creature was also an instant and it had trample as long as it's blocked by an artifact creature with rampage? Like, that stuff is fun and stupid, and it also is a way they can throw one or two little piecemeal cards in here to try to, like, let's try to make modular a thing. How can we do that? Well, we'll throw a couple modular cards in here where in a way we couldn't elsewhere. It's just been a fun set to see so far, and we're not even all the way through it yet, despite us kind of doing this review. So I am very excited for this. It hits a lot of the things I like from a set.
It feels like this is definitely a set, too, that they want to, for when things start to kind of open up, COVID levels aren't as bad as what they are in different places, to be drafted. Some of the different archetypes that they have in this set, it definitely seems like they want this to be a fun draft experience for people.
Well, yeah, in fun in terms of both as a draft experience and just like aesthetically speaking. There's like a ton of weird squirrels and things like that in here. Like it's not an unset, but it like has elements of unset goofiness in it for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll just kind of go through each, talk about cards we want to bring up. And the first one I'm going to jump on, because this is the one I'm really curious what you guys think, is Esper Sentinel. It's a single white mana for a human soldier. It's an artifact creature. 1/1. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power.
You ready to see another $40 card?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what the modern demand on it is. The first thing I will say is I think most players are bad at evaluating white card draw when it's attached to creatures. I think every time we've got one of these, whether it's that Mangara we got last year, or things like Verge Rangers, I guess is more of a ramp thing, but like whenever we get one of these in white, the average player, I think, overhypes how effective they are. Card draw on creatures is always a risky proposition because it's so easy to remove. This is a creature and an artifact simultaneously, so it's twice as easy to remove. That said, it's very efficient. It's 1 mana. If you drop it on turn 1 and pass a turn, anyone who's dropping a Soul Ring or a Signet on their next 1 or 2 or 3 turns is probably going to maybe be drawing you cards. And there's definitely commanders out there that are just going to buff it from the get-go. If you're playing, something like Elish Norn or the new Brina commander in Orzhov colors that puts counters on your own stuff when you attack, it's going to be very easy to turn it into a 3 or 4 or 5 or something, in an equipment deck where you can very easily throw equipment on it. Again, super easy to buff it up, and people have no choice but to pay that tax. It's absolutely going to be a really, really good card in a lot of places. But I see everyone like going crazy over it, and I just think back to every previous white creature with the word draw a card on it that people also reacted that way to. And almost none of them have ever panned out to be as effective as everyone seems to think they're going to be. What do you guys think?
All I'm thinking is Boros card draw. That's all I'm thinking right now.
Again, to be clear, like the decks where it's going to be good, it's going to be great.
Yes.
I think it is going to really shine in some decks. But like, is it a card where like I'm playing a white, so I'm going to splash this? I don't think it's that kind of card.
No, I think if you're in mono white, I think it's fine.
Sure,
If
yeah.
you're in Boros, it's good. But if you're playing white black, white blue, white red, wait, we already said white red. Oh yeah, because green's the worst color in Magic, so we're not gonna say green.
Oh,
Any of those colors, I think it's phenomenal. And the way I would look at this card is, if I were building the deck, this would go into a card draw slot. I wouldn't even consider it a creature. I would be like, this is meant to be a card draw outlet. Who cares that it's a creature? Any of that stuff. It could die easy or whatever. Who cares? But it is still a heuristic study built onto a creature, so in white, and I think you're going to at least net 2 cards out of it for 1 mana.
Well, right, and at 1 mana, that's all you need. Like, if you get 1 or 2 cards, if you get 2 cards off it, great. That's worth the time you spent.
And being a
no, that's
creature,
good point.
it's reanimatable. So, I mean, it's easier to bring back as a creature and an artifact
Sure.
versus it being an enchantment like the one in blue. So,
How about you, Max and Joe? What are your thoughts here?
I think I get what Chris is saying. I would see this just as a creature. I would just see this as a 1/1 human with an upside, because it's great early game, like you were saying, Dana, but I feel like late game, if you drop this after like a board wipe and you have no way to pump it, it's probably going to die or just sit there and people aren't going to block it, or they will block it so it dies. I think this card is good. I just think there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through to make it an all-star.
And Joe, last to you. What do you thought here?
Yeah, I definitely thought it was kind of cool. I was talking with Max, like, is this a creature Mystic Remora kind of thing where you're not really having to pay any kind of upkeep on it? I mean, if you're playing this like turn 1, I could see how it would net you some cards. It feels weird to try to kill this thing or path to exile it because you don't want someone to be drawing cards off of it. But it does seem like it'd be good, like you were saying in Brina. And then the C20 commanders, the Mardu one, who cares about humans, so this can kind of pump it up too, or maybe be an include in that deck for some more card draw, because I think that deck was lacking a little bit of card draw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, in Soldier, that's a very relevant card type, particularly in white too. There's a lot of Soldier decks out there that, hey, that's just going to get buffed just because there's a ton of things in those decks that buff Soldiers. So, you mentioned the human thing as well. That's relevant, like the Cigar to Humans deck. So there's definitely things out there where it's just going to accidentally suddenly be 2 or 3. I'll be curious. Chris mentioned the price. I'll be curious where the price settles in on this, because I do think people are going to are going to chase it right away. We'll see how much staying power it has, but I think it is a much more solid card than some of the attempts we've had at this kind of thing in the past.
agreed.
Chris, what do you think is interesting to talk about here?
I don't want to talk about any of these cards because I hate them all. There's so many cards I want to talk about. The big thing I want to talk about, though, this is the first thing I'm going to bring up, is Wizards really put an attempt in the set to do reserve list cards, but not do reserve list cards.
Right.
Such as, what is it, Garth? Is that the card I'm thinking of? The 5-color commander that creates Black Lotuses. We have the enchantment, or the creature that's a Serra Sanctum. I mean, all sorts of cards like that they've been pushing lately, which I like because it gives you an option to play those cards, but I don't like at the same time because they're walking that fine line, and I don't want to see this game crash where people are like, oh, I hate this game, we're going to sue all this stuff. Now I'm going into politics of that stuff, so let's stop talking about this.
Sure.
But that's my biggest fear over everything with that. So, let's talk about cards. What do I want to talk about? Absolutely nothing. That's what I just said, right? No, I want to talk about the cycle. I don't really know what they're calling them, but we have Grief, Solidarity, I think is the other one. So there's going to be a cycle of them. It's all evoke creatures, which I love. I love the ability to have multiple outlets for a card. And, the ability to evoke, you can pretty much doing a Force of Will ability, exile a card, of the same color to evoke this card to do the ability. The best one I've seen so far for commander play, and I might be wrong on this, is the one that's got Swords to Plowshares stapled on it.
Yeah, that's the white one.
Yeah, I'm looking for Solitude. That's what
Solitude,
it's called.
yeah.
Yep. Which is a, 3/2 for 5 that has Flash and Lifelink. So, you could just Swords for 5 mana at the end of your turn with a 3/2 Lifelinker and start beating face afterwards. But, evoke, just exile a white card and sword something. Having another option for a free destroy something is huge in Commander.
I don't love this one. I don't love any of these necessarily. Number one, I think they're definitely, they're fine. I think number one, they're definitely more tuned for Modern.
Yes.
In Modern, being able to pitch that card because it doesn't cost anything, right? Swords to Plowshares of Path even cost 1 mana, and that's crazy. But this, assuming you're pitching the card to it, doesn't cost you anything. You're just you're entirely tapped out, and someone goes to combo off or do whatever they're going to do to end the game, and you can pitch a white card and flash this in and stop them from doing their whatever they're doing. That is super powerful in a format like Modern, especially where everything is kind of cutting edge. In Commander, unless you're playing super competitive, I don't know how often that kind of thing is something you need when you do have access to Sword and Path, and it's a little bit easier to leave mana open, and you're in Orzhov colors or something where you also have access to Anguish Unmaking and Despark and things like that. I'm not sure if I'm playing Azorius, when I also have Reality Shift and also have Pongify and Upper Hybridization, do I also need this too? I don't know if I want to run it in those kind of decks.
Even though it's a creature?
Yeah, because it's not that good. In Commander, a 3/2 creature with no evasion and lifelink, again, unless you have some life gain synergies or something going on, I don't think is that useful necessarily. So I think something that works with your deck is probably going to be better a lot of the time. At least that's what I think. But I think these are all made more for Modern, so I get why they're here in the Mythic slots. I just think they're only fine in Commander. They're not that amazing. But I could be in the minority.
I mean, I think all of these have the ability to be really busted in Commander if you have ways to abuse them. So, Solitude,
sure. Yes.
Solitude is going to go into Brago because,
for sure,
it's a May, so, I don't have to sword something, but it is just it's another way for me to kind of dirtle the game until I can find a win con. I hate to put it that way, but it's another removal spell. So I look at Solitude as a creature more than the Evoke. Some of the other ones in this cycle, like Grief, I would probably use the Evoke more than hard casting it. Same with probably the blue one. But I think they're all cool, and I do agree kind of with you, Dana. They feel more tuned for Modern, but I think they all have their place in Commander, especially probably the green and white ones, because that green one that can essentially put your graveyard on the bottom of your library is super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the green one too had Reach, and it was a 3 mana, so 1 green for a 3/4 body is still going to be relative, especially for blockers, that kind of stuff in Commander. And it's a ETB. Now, it's not a May up to 1 target player, so it's forcing you to do that. But again, if you have a way to blink it, reanimate it, I mean, you can constantly kind of keep shuffling in someone's graveyard if they're trying to Moonlight bargain it out.
Yeah, that's a good point there, and Max's point about it being a Brago deck, that's the caveat I would make too that I didn't make when I said my whole thing about the card is, yes, in decks where you can do abusive things with it, all of these are great, especially Solitude. If you're playing Brago where you can use that ability just multiple times, that's fantastic. Or you're in Rune or Yorion or whatever, decks that can take advantage of it, it's excellent. I was just kind of thinking in terms of generically as a card, if I'm playing white and I don't have ways to do something crazy with it, is it that good of a spell? For me, no, I don't think it is. But in a specific deck where you can really do crazy stuff with it, yeah, fantastic card for sure. Max, what do you have here for us?
So I'm going to jump down because Chris bringing up the Evoke cycle took my first card that was Solitude. So I am going to jump down all the way to the multicolored and just talk about some awesome reprints that we're getting in Modern Horizons.
We got some really nice ones.
I love that they're trying to make Enchantress a thing in Modern with this set. Us getting a Mirari's Wake reprint at Mythic, unfortunately. Sterling Grove at Rare. And then, that said, the white enchantment that gives you Shroud for 3 mana. So, Solitary Confinement.
Yes.
3 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice it unless you discard a card. Skip your draw step. You have Shroud and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. That is bonkers. I mean, that could save you from a massive burn spell or playing against Chris's Mogus deck. This just kind of shuts that off, along with giving you Shroud so nobody can target you, It's going to be a great card in those Enchantress decks in Commander and Modern.
Yeah, that was a reprint that was cool to see too, because it hasn't had one in forever. So that was a really nice one. And you didn't even mention that Enchantress's Presence got a reprint too, which also needed it for those decks.
It did, yeah.
And then, of course, Chris mentioned reserve list-esque cards showing up on creatures. The one he was referring to was Sanctum Weaver, which is a creature that taps for mana, add X mana of any one color, or X is the number of enchantments you control. And it's any one color, it's not even just white. Yep. And it's an enchantment creature, so it counts itself. That's insane.
Yes.
Yeah,
can't wait to put that into my Tuvasa deck. Can't wait.
Yeah, that would just go in every enchantment deck, just period.
Yeah.
Joe, what do you like here?
I was looking at some of the colorless cards, some of the artifact stuff that they had. So the first one being the Dermo Taxi, the 2 cadavers in a trench coat. Seemed to be what a lot of people are kind of calling it, and just looking to see what you could imprint with that. Now, obviously, you do need the creature in your graveyard already, but being able to tap 2 other creatures to turn it into that, it seems like it could be a lot of fun. It's only 2. It's like the first vehicle that doesn't actually have a crew cost, I guess. I mean, you're kind of crewing to get it to turn into whatever you imprinted, but that was a cool mixture of different abilities.
I've been kind of impressed by all the things they've been able to do to keep vehicles relevant. When they were first spoiled in Kaladesh, they really didn't do very much for me, and I didn't think it seemed like Design Space had a lot of room. But they've consistently been able to come up with something in a whole bunch of different sets since then to make vehicles interesting. And this is just the latest version of that. That is a very cool card for sure.
I really like this card because it's a way to be like, I'm going to wrath the board, let my commander go to the graveyard, play Dermataxi, and then imprint my commander, and then just put it back in the zone. So now you essentially have 2 copies of your commander ready to go.
Yeah, right there, available. And at 2 mana in any deck is really, really useful too, because it's colorless. It can just go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. We don't talk about colorless cards.
Still susceptible to the culling ritual, but, you still want to try to play it.
Well, I've got one here, Rise and Shine. It's one of the blue furry sorcery. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature, and you put 4+1 counters on each artifact that becomes a creature this way. So that isn't that exciting, but you can overload it for 4 blue, at which point all non-creature artifacts you control become 0/0 artifact creatures and get 4+1 counters on it. So I like this, number one, because I have a deck where this would be relevant, but in the past when we've gotten these kind of effects that make non-creature artifacts into artifacts, oftentimes they give them power toughness equal to their converted mana cost. So like if you have a bunch of treasures or something out, you just lose your treasure tokens. This doesn't do that. This makes them into artifact creatures and they get the counters on them. So like if you've got 20 treasures out, your treasures turn into 4/4 creatures that can then swing in, or your clue tokens or your food tokens or whatever. They've tried this effect before, but I think this is going to be far and away the most effective version of this we've ever seen. I think there's like a Tezzeret ult that lets your stuff become 5/5s, and that probably is really good, but like the odds of getting to that are pretty slim. Whereas this is just, you need to have 6 mana of this in your hand, and if you've got a ton of treasures or something, you can probably kill somebody. It's just a cool card that I think is going to give those clue and treasure style decks a win condition. And if you're in one of those artifact themed decks where sometimes it's tough to turn that corner and get a win, turn all your rocks into creatures. Or if you're in some kind of equipment deck and have a ton of equipment and you're not in a position to suit up one creature, it can give you a way to swing through and kill somebody with a bunch of swords that are now 4/4 creatures.
Yeah, and I think too, like you had said, just the difference in, instead of it being at CMC, like a card like Toymaker where you have to discard and then the non-creature turns into, that's kind of a new way of looking at it. I was surprised by the art. Like I'm pretty sure the book in that art is like holding a knife somehow.
Yeah. And fire, I believe, which seems like a bad idea for a book.
It was definitely like a, Beauty and the Beast gone wrong.
Yes. Well, there's an enchantment from one of the 2 Mirrodin blocks, I forget which, called March of the Machines.
Yep.
That animates artifacts as well. And the problem with that one that I encountered whenever I tried it was it does all artifacts. So like if someone has mana rocks of their own or equipment of their own that isn't currently tapped, then all the stuff you've just made that you plan to swing with is able to be blocked by the stuff that they still have there. And again, this gets around that because it only hits your stuff. So like you're not giving them blockers for the creatures you just made too. So yeah, I'm a fan of this one. Chris, what do you think's interesting here that we've got?
I keep coming back to this card, and it's a horrendous card just because I don't know how to say its name.
Oh, Lord.
It's like Asmoranomordicada. I'm about to summon a demon right now, so I'm going to stop. But, I mean, I don't know. I like this card as well, and I'm not sure how this would be played in Modern per se, but I like it for commander purposes because I've seen a lot of people actually recently have been playing the Madness decks, and the ability to just cast this for 1 mana to get a 3/3 comes in battlefield. You search your library for the Underworld Cookbook, which makes food and something else. I think it returns a creature from the battle or from the graveyard to your hand or something like that. And then you sacrifice 2 foods, and you can have a creature kill itself pretty much. More than likely, 6 damage is quite a bit of damage to kill something. I like how they're pushing food again. Food is an amazing mechanic. I love it. It's my go-to whenever I play the stupid Planeswalker that's 3 mana that's banned in every freaking format.
Oko.
I know. I have nightmares about him. But I play him in Commander, and every time I play him, I'm like, don't worry, I'm just hungry, so I'm going to make foods, and make foods, and make foods, and then I'm going to ult them, and we're going to have a good old day.
Yeah, what's nice about this, because you mentioned Madness, Chris,
Yes.
the Madness commander we got in the Madness deck was Andre Falconwrath, who no one really plays for Madness. They just use her to like draw down to a combo. They just aren't doing actual discard stuff. It's just using that as an outlet to tap it on tap her to draw down and find a piece, World Gorger Dragon or whatever it winds up being. That's not what this will do. Like in this case, this is a commander where you will try to do Madness stuff.
Yeah, and you'll actually play the cards for Madness because you're discarding them, so you have your deck set up to have the additional mana to do the Madness ability as soon as you discard it. Which I like because, you know, there are some cool Madness stuff, and I'd like to see a cool actual Madness deck played.
Yes, I would too. And this is a neat old lore character, too, that I didn't think we'd ever get in a card. And I like how creative they got. In order to fit the name on the text box, they couldn't put a CMC in there. So they found a pretty cool way around that, too. So I have a lot of respect for some of the fun, creative things they came up with for cards this time through.
Yeah, and I actually, in this whole set, I haven't found my Hogak or my Urza yet. And I've been looking, and I haven't found it yet.
Nothing's that busted so far?
Not yet.
Hey,
I'm
now.
sure there is one. It'll be brought up to me at some point.
You can get Urza in the old border now.
That's true, you can.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So if you want that, start saving your nickels and dimes.
So there was one other card I wanted to discuss quick, and this is on modern terms. And I think Joe was right that Watsy's reading Reddit and looking at all the memes out there because they're hating on, you know, the most fair deck in modern, and that is Tron. And with this wonderful card called Voidmere that just straight up says whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, you counter that spell. And that's just a cheaty face card, and I don't like it, and it makes me mad.
Yeah, I'm not going to guess the modern implications of Voidmere.
I think everything modern, legacy, I mean, other stuff like that, I think that card's going to be phenomenal.
So I throw this to Joe here. Joe, what are your thoughts on Voidmere and Commander? And I guess we should read Voidmere here just briefly. It's an artifact, 2 mana. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So what do you think about this one for Commander, Joe?
Yeah, Voidmere, that was the one that seemed to get, like, the most adverse reaction out of people. People either saying they love it, or people saying that they hate it, and I have a colorless deck, and how dare you play this against me. I know Zach from Commander Social, he was talking about playing Tron, and I was like, man, they heard that you were putting Tron together, and they said no. Like, they stopped that. Looking at it, too, I mean, for Commander, it's definitely going to make you have to pause. You're going to have to maybe not fully use your Soul Ring to tap out a bunch of colorless mana for stuff. Now you'll have to kind of pick your spots on how you're wanting to cast things. It does in some ways shut down completely colorless decks. But again, it's, what is it? Is it a May ability? Or as far as you having that in your deck and deciding to play it or not, that's a May for you. You may still have this in your deck, but you don't have to play it. And so that, again, where it goes into the discussion, the Rule 0 stuff. Hey, I do have this. I see you're playing a colorless deck. I'm not going to play this, turn 1 just to shut you down so you have to sit there. But it's still a part of the conversation to have. And it does slow down a lot of the fast mana, some of the other stuff that people are putting out. Some of the free spells, the Fierce Guardianships, deflecting swats. Because if you're just casting those for free, it's really shutting a lot of that down and sort of almost putting the brakes on how fast some of the Commander games and some of the cards have been.
How about you, Max? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I agree with Joe. Like, this is definitely more of the conversational card that you just gotta say, hey, yeah, I run it, but again, I don't tutor for it, or I'd have no way to tutor for it, and I like playing against your colorless deck, so I'm probably not even going to cast it. But not even just the free spells of Force of Will or the deflecting swats, but this also shuts down a lot of those commanders we've seen where you keep the mana in your mana pool through phases. So like the original Krufix and stuff like that, or Horizon Stone, it shuts down that stuff because that's just colorless mana sitting in your mana pool. So you need to, as the player playing against it, you need to figure out how to divvy up your mana so you still have colored mana to get around it.
I mean, yes, there are people out there in Commander, so this is my caveat before I say what I'm going to say, who are playing perfectly fair Traxos decks or Hope of Ghirapur decks, that this is going to occasionally totally bone them. I put Ashwin Rose on stream one time with the Eatrak cast a couple months back, and she has a relatively fair, I can't remember if it's Kozilek or Ulamog deck, but like, she's not running Kozilek. She's not running like 35 mana rocks or something. Like it's going to take her 8 turns to get it out probably most of the time, and it's not doing anything terribly degenerate necessarily. Someone's going to drop this against her at some point, and she's just not going to be able to play Magic, and that sucks. However, 98% of the time when this card comes down, it's just going to stop degenerate things from happening. It's going to stop someone from tapping that mana crypt, or it's going to stop someone from casting that Fierce Guardianship, or from, doing some kind of a infinite mana combo and casting, some kind of a weird loop with with whatever, and I'm not even sure what. Or just in general, it's going to stop things that are kind of abusive from happening most of the time. And yes, Ashwin has a fair Eldrazi deck, but there's a ton of ones out there that aren't. And when you're playing that 30 mana rock, I'm going to get Kozilek out on turn 3 deck, I don't feel bad if someone plays a Void Mirror that's going to shut you down once in a while, because most of the time you're not going to see it anyway. I don't know. I think that this is a perfectly fair card most of the time, because it's going to be dead a ton of times. I'm not going to put it in decks. The amount of times it's not going to do any good, it's not worth a card slot most of the time.
It's definitely going to be a meta-dependent deck. So if you're playing in the fast grouping, if you're playing CEDH, it's probably going to be a huge card too.
Yep. That right there will be interesting.
Yeah. Or if you're playing against that one guy every week who's always, being that complete... all that fun stuff. You just jam this in there, and I wouldn't even have a qualm if you're like, turn 1 Vampiric Tutor, put that right on top, and be like, turn 2, I'm jamming this just because you made me so mad last week type of deal.
And if it so happens next game with that same deck, I stumble against someone playing a Traxos deck, and I draw this, I just won't cast it. That's easy enough to do. Right. I can just not cast it then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting card, and the ramifications elsewhere, I think, are a much bigger deal maybe than they are in Commander.
Agreed, yeah, especially if you're playing fair Commander.
Yeah.
Well, in playing fair Commander, that's always something to remember. Every card has a May ability on it. You may play the card or not. And so it's up to you on whether or not you're going to cast it.
Yeah, that's a real good point, Joe. Since you're talking, Joe, what do you like here you want to talk about next?
So there was sort of a sets of cards that I've started noticing popping up. So this one from Modern Horizons 2 called Suspend. It's Suspend. It's 1 blue to cast it. It's an instant. Exile target creature and put 2 time counters on it. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. And it says at the beginning of its owner's upkeep, they remove a time counter. When the last is removed, they play it without paying its mana cost. If it's a creature, it has haste. And so we're starting to see, or I've started to notice, a lot of these exile target creature effects that are popping up for blue. Back in Kaldheim, there was Raven Form, which was 2 and a blue for a sorcery that exiled a target creature artifact and gave the controller a bird. And then in Strixhaven, we even saw Resculpt, which was 1 and a blue, which was an instant, and you exile target artifact or creature, and its controller got a 4/4 blue-red elemental creature token. And so exile effects in blue, especially hitting creatures and artifacts, seem to be starting to kind of creep their way in more. I know people always talk about the green effect in Magic, but blue's starting to get some more of these removal spells that aren't exactly bound.
Yeah. That's why I've actually had lots of discussions with players at our shop and friends of mine that blue-green is the strongest color combination in Magic. I give a lot of flack to Max, that red's the best color, but honestly, green and blue are the 2 strongest colors. And then you combine them together and there's not much that it can't do.
Yeah, I definitely agree here. And this one especially, I think, in limited, like in Commander, I'm not sure if I want, I already have Rapid Hybridization and Pongify, like we mentioned earlier, talking about removal of access to in blue. I don't know in Commander if I care that much about this necessarily, because it's only going to buy me 2 turns, but like in Modern or limited, 1 mana to get a creature gone for a few turns, that seems huge.
So think about this card, Dana, in the aspect of Teferi's Protection, or Boros Charm, or Heroic Intervention. Think about it in that terms over as a removal card. Would you play it then? Because it's versatile, because you could hit your own creature.
Yeah, that's true. Like the utility of hitting your own creature is pretty good. I don't think I would still. I think then I would just probably have a counter spell in that slot. I just don't think I'm going to play it, but I think it's a really neat card and it's a fun effect. And I'm really curious. I think it's going to be better in other formats than it is in ours. And I think it's probably still just fine in ours.
I just want to see someone hit a Gulto with it and be like, oh, he's going on Suspend. And you're like, oh, no.
What's going to happen now? The next one I want to talk about, because I was genuinely shocked that this is a card that we're getting, is Damn. It's a double black sorcery. So destroy target creature, and a creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated, which I guess would be perfectly fine in limited. That's a pretty fine removal spell in limited. The important part here, though, is it says overload white, and you may cast this spell for its overload cost, and if you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So if you are in an Orzhov deck, it's just a strictly better Damnation or Wrath of God, basically.
I mean, it is Wrath of God.
Version.
Yeah.
It's literally just another version you can play.
Yeah, 4 mana for Wrath of God to overload. That's nice.
And I guess I say strictly better, I guess because it requires white to do that, and that isn't true, because you can't run this in a mono black deck or a deck without white, I guess. But like, if you have access to both those colors, it's a better version of two of the most efficient board wipes ever printed.
And this card almost seems like, in some ways, a callback to the Modern Horizons 1 when they had Winds of Abandon, because I think that one you could exile, or you could overload that one again.
Yep.
And so it was kind of cool to see how they've created this one and just doing some of the board wipes with the overload cost, because it makes your removal really versatile. Do you want a single, or do you want just like a big board wipe?
Well, in also, because Time Spiral block had Damnation in the first place, which was basically just a color shifted Wrath of God. So now we get kind of the combined version of those two here in Dam. It's a really good card. It's also just a fun, this is like what I was talking about in terms of them making goofy, weird things that call back and reference kind of the meta history of the game. I just love everything about this card. Chris, what do you like to talk about here?
How about all the reanimation effects in this set?
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few of them. Like the one that I have my eyes on right now is Graceful Restoration, and strictly for my Alesha deck. Due to the simple fact that I can return up to 2 target creatures with power 2 or less from my graveyard to the battlefield for 5 mana. So this replaces, I'm playing another 5 mana one, which is target permanent, but I'd rather have the creatures over any permanent. But there's so many of them. There's a couple other ones. I was just reading another one, what's it called? Worse for Wear or something like that. So it's strictly a better animate dead. I mean, yeah, you get non-legendary creature, but it comes in with a -1/-1 counter on it. But it's not an enchantment, so the creature can't die easier. Right. I mean, there's quite a few of them, and I've been seeing a lot of reanimation effects in Commander lately out of the newer players that are around our local area anyways. And I think it might be due to the simple fact that I preach this all the time when someone comes up to me. Where you got ideas for the deck? Play with your graveyard. So now people are starting to actually play with their graveyards, because it is another aspect of the game. And the more that you can add into your deck to do something, without going overboard, which we discussed a couple weeks ago, if you add too much, the deck doesn't do it, what it needs to do. Then you just have more outlets to win. And I like having the option of playing with the graveyard.
Well, it's worth noting on Persist, too. That's the one that returns a non-legendary creature card from a graveyard to the battlefield. Persist, of course, is a keyword from way back in Magic's past in the Lorwyn block. And the art on the Persist card features what's clearly a Kithkin from Lorwyn being reanimated. Of course, Persist put a -1 counter and everything, too. So essentially, it's the Persist keyword on a card using creatures from the world where we first got the Persist keyword. Like, that's amazing. Like, they don't have to go to that detail. This is a cool card just on its own. But the fact that like they did that extra step and made it reference kind of itself and the plane it was from is what's so cool about this set. Just those levels of depth in terms of design and development is just delightful, I think.
Yes.
So Chris, on the topic of reanimation, are you going to run Unmarked Grave in Alesha to search your library for a non-legendary creature and put it in the bin?
I'm definitely contemplating it. I mean, this deck has so many cards I need to do because I've been very disappointed with the way that it's been playing. So it's something I got to just lay out the deck and start swapping cards in and out and getting more play in with it.
Chris, because we're really good friends, I would let you play that deck with like 130 cards.
just so he has enough?
Yeah, just because then I might beat it for once.
I don't know, man. It's been playing horrendous lately, so I don't know. You'll probably just beat it all the time.
Unmarked Grave is one of those fun testaments to just how insane Entomb is as a card.
Yeah.
If Unmarked Grave costs twice as much as sorcery speed and only hits non-legendary stuff, and it's still really good. That's how
that's like
Entomb is.
A Marin deck's dream card there.
Yeah.
Well, it also makes me wonder, like you're seeing those cards printed in Modern, so I don't know why they're saying non-legendary. Because it's almost like they're trying to turn Modern into the new Legacy.
Kind of.
Because, you're getting the abilities to do, like your Reanimator decks and stuff like that. But the good cards to reanimate are legendary. So in a competitive format, that becomes unviable. So it almost seems like they're putting into a Modern set, but it's pushing more towards the Commander players.
Yeah, I mean, this one definitely seems like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too in terms of both pushing Modern to, like you said, replace Legacy to a degree and catering Commander players, but they seem to have managed to strike that balance pretty successfully, I think.
Yep. I was hoping they'd give us a Ren and 6 reprint is what I was hoping.
We'll get that that'll be in the Innistrad set this fall, I'm pretty sure. I think we've seen some art from it already. Or the reprint, I guess you're asking for. That we could definitely use.
An old border? First ever Planeswalker in old border.
Well, there's still time, so you might get your wish.
That's true. Max, what do you have for us here?
I'm going to talk about a Planeswalker, and I'm going to talk about Dakin Shadowslayer.
Nice.
This is the Dakin Planeswalker for Esper, so white, blue, black, for a 0 loyalty Planeswalker. But when he enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters on him equal to the number of lands you control. Wow, that sounds similar to an artifact I like in most of my decks.
Yeah, it does.
All of his abilities are super cool, like his +1 lets you surveil 2, -3 exiles target creature, and then his ultimate at -6. You may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. Like, that's just super cool. That's going to go in a lot of Esper artifact decks. I do like that it's both, hand or graveyard, so if you can't cast that Darksteel Forge for whatever reason, you can just plop that for free out of your hand. The art is super cool on all 2 versions of the card. The normal frame, the extended art, and the sketch frame. They all look super sweet, so that is probably the one Planeswalker I'm looking forward to the most out of this set.
One thing I like about Dakin, but I think this is true of, we have 2 other Planeswalkers so far. We have Grist, the Hungering Tide, and we have Gaedrone Dahada. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I think I did. All 3 of them, you mentioned Dakin's abilities and how they reflect the Black Blade in terms of how many loyalty counters he has, and exiling a creature kind of ties in with the Black Blade killing creatures. He's a card that effectively reflects him as a character. Sometimes, particularly in the last couple of years, they've just made so many Planeswalkers, they just kind of get generic abilities. Yeah, your +1 puts a +1 counter on a creature, your -2, gains you 3 life or whatever, and they don't necessarily always tell you anything about the character on the card. This Dakin one absolutely does. The Grist, the Hungering Tide, the Insect Planeswalker, does a bunch of death bug things. Gaedrone, who was Dakin's archenemy in the story and cursed him, she does a bunch of corruption things that keep the creatures she hits from being able to attack her, and then gains control of them like she did with Dakin. All 3 of these are really well designed from kind of a lore and Vorthos standpoint, in addition to being good cards. It's just how much time they spent developing all of these is very, very apparent, and I'm really appreciative of it.
And it's not Jace.
It's not Jace. Well, yeah, right. And they're characters we haven't seen before, which is nice too. Is there anything from you here, Joe, you want to talk about?
Yeah, for me, I was sad to see them reprint the Odyssey Plains 333. That one was always kind of one of my favorite. That's the Storms plane. I had a bunch of the older ones, and so it's cool to see them use the new art for it. I was kind of impressed this morning. I think Cauldra Complete, to see that one come out as the legendary artifact, equipment, living weapon, indestructible. Equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature, equip 7. Which does seem like a lot, but if you're playing with a Stoneforge Mystic,
right,
you can kind of cheat this out relatively quick.
Or even Balan, using that ability to equip it for 2 mana versus the 7.
And they managed to bring back Living Weapon. So that's another old thing that they've returned with, which is useful to decks like Temet, where you can give creature tokens unblockable, and suddenly your Cauldra Complete is technically a creature token that's pretty suited up, and you can make it unblockable to kind of poke through as well. Yeah, these kind of fun throwbacks, both in terms of lore and in terms of mechanics, just give fun toys to decks that really could have used them. So yeah, this is a really cool card.
I also like that it's combat damage, so you can't, somehow put it on a different creature with Death Touch and do the bow combo like we've seen in Glissa and just exile the entire board.
I don't know who would do that, Max. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. I don't run Blood Bond. What are you talking about?
I actually played Glissa on stream this week, and I kept trying to get the 2 out simultaneously and couldn't ever quite pull it off.
It's cool too because you can still attach your Cauldra to your Cauldra and make
That's true.
Ultimate kind of artifact monster type thing. I mean, if you want to have that achievement, I guess you can go for it. And even some of the callbacks, the borderless art for Imperial Recruiter, seeing in the background some of the art that they had add to it is just really cool. A lot of the throwbacks that they have. A lot of the attention to detail in this set, some of the memes, some of the jokes, some of the different stuff that they have in there. It makes it a fun set. It makes packs even more fun to crack open or cards to kind of search for.
Yeah, the flavor on all these things is huge as well, and There's just so much powerful stuff here. I just can't. Like, you're going to wind up with really strong cards that are dirt cheap because there's just so many good things that people are going to want out of this set.
Yeah, and we haven't even seen a whole bunch of the commons and uncommons, which are going to be where a lot of good playable cards are going to come from.
Well, let's talk about one more from each of us. The first one I want to mention is Peru the Volatile. So this is a Mardu Elder Dragon, 2 red, white, black, 8 mana total, 7/7 as well. So it's kind of templated like the original Elder Dragons from way back in the Legends. They all had a casting cost like this. They were all 7/7s, and they had this same line of text at the beginning of your upkeep: sacrifice Peru the Volatile unless you pay Mardu in this case, but it was whatever shard they were back in the day for the original 5 Elder Dragons. And I think Peru was Chromium's mate in lore. So this is a character that has been mentioned in the past in stories, and we finally got the card. The thing that I like about this, even like I'm not going to probably play this as a commander or anything, or probably even put it in a deck, but what I wanted to point out and note was Peru has flying and lifelink, obviously, but there's also an ability here that says whenever Peru dies, it deals 7 damage to each non-legendary creature. The
just don't pay the upkeep cost.
Right, and that's what's super cool about it. Like, the upkeep way back in the day, they were just so bad at balancing creatures because they're like, well, it's a 7/7 with flying, I better have a giant upkeep on it, or I don't know what they thought, which kind of made them all very difficult to play. In this case, they've managed to turn this upkeep cost into like a positive, or at least an alternate way to use the commander. You can get it out, and then you can have it there, and whenever you choose to, you can choose to let it kick off and wipe the board and gain you a ton of life in the process. They've turned that kind of poorly thought out downside on the original 5 Elder Dragons into a really neat mechanical way to make this card interesting. Whoever designed that or thought of that and thought of a way to turn that into a positive, bravo, that is super, super clever. You made a really neat card, throwing back to an old mechanic by making it relevant again. I just think it's a fantastic design.
I wonder if this means we'll get the other missing 4 Elder Dragons in the other shards.
I would bet we won't this set, but that feels the kind of thing.
Well, yeah.
But that feels the kind of thing where, like, they're going to, over the course of the next 5 years, eventually, like, one at a time, drop them out. Because I don't think we're going to get the rest of the swords this set either. I don't know if there's enough mythic slots, but I would bet.
Don't we only need 3 more or something like that?
Just 2 more, because we got 2 last time, 1 so far. I think there's 2 more to go.
Oh, yeah, 2 more, because there's the green one this time.
And I think they'll slowly drip those out, too, over the course of the next few years in different sets. So, all right, Chris, let's hear one more from you that you think is interesting.
I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. There's so many of them, and I can't really choose one.
We could have each picked 3 meme cards, and that would have been fine, because there's a ton of interesting meme cards that are at the very least funny. Ultra of the Gorth is hilarious.
I got a good meme card for you. And because no one likes playing, what is this card? Possibility Storm? I think that's what this card is.
Oh, yeah.
So there's one. So if you want to be meme-ish, but you want to have fun when you're playing, and that's Glimpse of Tomorrow. For suspend for 3, with double red for the suspend cost, you shuffle all permanents you own into your library, then reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put all non-aura permanent cards revealed this way onto the battlefield. Then do the same for all aura cards, and put the rest of the cards at the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is a way to just go Possibility Storm, my whole board. What's up? This is what we're gonna play now.
Do you have any decks where you're going to play this, Chris, or you just like the concept?
I like the concept because I like the whole aspect of, randomness of games and stuff like that. There's no way I'm going to play this card. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
My decks would die. I would do something and I would flip all lands or something and I'd be like, well, that's wonderful.
Hey, at least you get lands. You could be just hose yourself and get all like instants and sorceries.
That would probably happen too, knowing my luck. The 12 that I play in a deck, it'd be like all of them come out and I'd be like, good game, guys.
All right, Max, what's the last one you think is interesting here you want to talk about?
The last one I'm going to talk about is giving a huge shout out to Dr. Mike, friend of the show. And I want to talk about Lunis, Cryptozoologist. It's a legendary creature, snake elf scout for Simic, so a green and a blue. It's a 1/2. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, so make a clue token. And then you can tap it and sacrifice X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control, and then put the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. It's kind of chaotic. It's not super powerful in my opinion in Simic. Like, for a Simic commander, it doesn't say draw a card on it, so that's pretty cool. It's cheap, and it's a snake elf. Like, the art alone is super cool.
Isn't that just a Naga? Isn't that what snake
Basically, yeah.
creatures are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, Dr. Mike has a clue deck, and now he has a commander that actually cares about clues.
The day this was spoiled, like within 20 minutes of it, I was actually on my bike ride when it got posted, and and I have my headphones on, and I get like Slack alerts, and so a message when someone like DMs me, and I just get like a ding. Ding, 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 from Mike, like just like typing like crazy, and like hitting enter, and like, oh my god, this, and hitting enter, like he was so pumped to see Wonus. So yeah, that was fun. I'm like, what is happening? And I like stopped my bike and got off. I checked my phone, and it's just him like, did you see this card? Did you see this one? Oh my god, cool. He was like just going crazy. It was hilarious. Yeah. Again, another good example of them revisiting. I love clues as well. Revisiting a fun old mechanic and trying to find a way to make it relevant and let people build their goofy corner case deck around it. Exactly what I love seeing from Magic cards for sure. All right, Joe, what's your last one you have for us here before we wrap this up?
Yeah, last one for me is going to be the card that you're going to hate to pull in your Mythic slot, and that's Scion of Draco. Yeah, it's a 12 generic artifact creature dragon. It has domain. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control. It has flying, and then it says each creature you control gains vigilance if it's white, hexproof if it's blue, lifelink if it's black, first strike if it's red, and trample if it's green, and it's a 4/4. And so they put it in as a mythic, and I think this is going to be that, like, feel bad mythic, but also kind of the throwback to Draco. And I know how much CCO Brando loves Draco, and I know how much, too, that Eureka players love Draco, so now they get another baby Draco to throw into their deck.
And I gave them a chance to use Domain again for the first time in a long time, so that's always fun as well.
Sure is. Because, we got to be playing all the colors.
Right.
You all need to get off your 1 and 2 color decks and come join me in the madness of 3 to 5 colors.
It's just too much. It's just too many decisions. I just can't.
Also, the art, just the normal art for it, has that, was it like Terminator 2 vibes, where he gives the thumbs up as he's going down, so...
You know what? I didn't see that until you said it. Absolutely. It looks like Arnie going down in the pit of molten steel, for sure. We'll have to see if Brando builds this deck now. All right.
Or I guess you could probably just send them to him.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Have him autograph my Scion of Draco next year at Vegas is something we actually get to go. All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap up the show. Any final thoughts about the set? We still have some cards to go. Is there anything you haven't liked from the set so far, aside from stuff we've already mentioned? Chris, anything that jumps out at you?
Card base? No. I mean, of course, there's cards I'm not going to like, and that's just personal preference. I thought there was a Storm card in here. Oh, there it is. I found it finally. Stupid Storm. I hate Storm so bad. We had discussion about this. Yeah, so, okay, I'm off my tangent there. Aside from, certain cards in the set that are my personal preference of things I dislike, the only other thing that I don't like is the way that the set's being pushed from Wizards of the Coast. And anyone who knows anything about this, it's hard for some people to get product and stuff, and then it's getting marked up. So it's going to become hard for your average player to get their hands on it, which I don't like.
How about you, Max? What are your final thoughts on anything that you want that it's negative so far in your eyes?
I'm kind of in the same boat Chris is. Card-wise, there's not much negative. I do like that we're continuing to see a little bit of Commander influence on all of these products. Yeah. Like last year, like Modern Horizons 1, we got Hogak and Urza and some cool support cards, but like the talismans and whatnot, but there wasn't really much else for like huge impact on EDH. And here we're getting reprints of like Imperial Recruiter that, expensive cards, or even mildly expensive cards like Mirari's Wake and stuff. Those were all like above $10. Getting reprints, so it drops the price. But yeah, kind of like Chris said, the logistics of the product is what frustrates me, with the 7 different types of packs you can buy and where you find your certain version in foil in what pack. And the fact that it is going to be hard to get product makes it even worse. But you know what? The more versions of a card for the average player is great, because it lowers the price in the secondary market. For people who make their living off of selling Magic cards, I am so sorry you have to deal with this garbage fire of a nightmare of which version goes for what.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing that I'm glad I don't have to deal with at all, because that sounds like just a dumpster fire for sure. Joe, last thoughts here before we wrap this up.
Yeah, nobody ever lets me be negative, so how much time do we have?
As long as you need, my friend.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I mean, again, the price, and we always kind of talk about the price, and we grumble, and everybody says, oh, there's no way we're going to be able to afford double masters, and then you see everyone playing with the borderless foil blight steals, you're like, I guess people can't afford this. And so it's, buying the singles, but then also trying to figure out maybe what art style you're after, and just stick with that, because there are so many. I do feel bad for people who have to try to sort, figure out prices, trade, whatever else it may be, but that's basically it. I'm excited, hopefully, to see if Magic events come back, to see which one of these characters people kind of cosplay as. I want to see someone cosplay as Torok. I think that'll be fun. The Torok that they have where the guy's wearing like the cape with the eyeballs.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see at like GB Vegas.
Nice. In the past, we had the young pyromancer, and now we have the young necromancer on a card, and I hope that's a cycle that we get more of over the next few years, too, and I could see someone going as Liliana and then, like, bringing their kid along as the young necromancer or something. That would be a great cosplay as well. Well, Joe, thanks for joining us, and now we have a weekend of hanging out and playing Magic out of us, so will be a good time as well.
Woo! I can't wait.
Well, before we sign off, Joe, why don't you tell folks where they can find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, but I won't accept you.
Okay.
But you can also find me on Twitter. My name is Max is dying here. You can find me on Twitter at Ginger Joe, and the O is going to be a 0. So that's where you can find me. Go ahead and slide into my DMs, chit chat with me, shoot me messages, anything else, ask for trades, ask about what games or anything else I'm doing. I always like to chit chat, meet new people. So that's definitely where you can find me and talk with me. Again, do not try to find me on LinkedIn.
All right. You missed a golden chance to show for your OnlyFans there, but we can maybe do that in the after hours.
Yeah, I didn't. I figured that was like Patreon exclusive
right,
kind of content that we throw that one out first.
That's a good call. All right.
Definitely.
You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him at Ursa Bearwalker. And our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We'll be back later in the week with a deck tech. Until then, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
I'm Chris.
I'm Joe.